Cause I'm a boss.
Hi, how are you?
Well, how are you?
I'm good. I'm so excited. It's been forever. You look gorgeous.
Thank you. So do you. I love your hoops.
Oh, thank you. Let's get started. 1 second. To introduce our mentor, Eliana Murillo is the founder and CEO of Element and Company, which includes an innovation venture lab, production studio, and consulting firm. Her mission is to amplify and invest in diverse small businesses, startups, and content creators. Eliana previously spent 10 years at Google. Outside of tech, Eliana founded Latinas Who Brunch and co-founded her family's organic tequila. Give it up for Eliana. Right?
Gracias.
Oh my God. So how are you? I like to say the how are you and really kind of like dig into that because we've all had a hell of a year. So this how are you is different. Like how are you today?
Tell me the real. I'm good. Today I'm good. In the last year, I mean, I try to keep it 100. In the last year, I've had COVID. I have family members had COVID. I quit my job. I had another concussion. I mean, craziness. I'm grateful to be here. I'm grateful to work on things I'm passionate about. I am grateful that I can do this and be in half pajama pants, like waist down, that we're here like showing up.
Yeah.
I'm like
me too.
It's like we do put on our eyeliner and our lip color and I still got pajama pants on.
Yeah.
I'm grateful for moments like this to reconnect with people who I'm so glad when I do get to see when I'm like, hey, Janet, I'm in the studio. I didn't give you a heads up, but I'm here for a class in between meetings when I was in Miami before, which I love every time I can go to your workshops. Oh my God, I love it so much. And, we hadn't had a chance to like slow down and connect. And I think the year has taught me more than anything that the bad things will happen, hard things will happen, but it's always about how do we find the silver lining? How do we figure out new ways to pivot, new ways to connect? And so thank you for inviting me because today I feel good. Physically, I feel well. I feel inspired today. Not every day is a happy high note, but I'm grateful for the ones that are. And conversations like this make it that much more awesome.
So talk to me about your new company.
Yeah, so I left Google last July and have been on this journey now for, I don't know, a little over half a year. And what really inspired me to start this was to finally take the plunge. We've talked a little bit before. We were on a panel. It's how we met way back when, a few years back. We're talking about when you're doing something and you just realize it's time to pivot, it's time to move on to something else. And I had a great career at Google. I'm really grateful for the time there, but I realized that I wanted to do something on my own. I wanted to lead my own company and also give more time, love, and attention to what I was doing on the side. So I'm like I say, I'm a serial side hustler. I was doing alquimia, tequila on the side. I had started Latinas Who Brunch and was like, okay, both of those need more time and attention. And then there's other things I wanted to do that I was like, it's time for me to leave Google to pursue these full time. So you mentioned a couple of things within Element and Companies, my umbrella for it. So Element Venture Studios is the innovation lab. So both developing my own, soon I'll be sharing more about different platforms I'm building because I realized I really want to build technology that supports and advances diverse communities. And I was like, I need to build this myself. It doesn't exist. So early stages of developing stuff like that. Also working with diverse founders of startups and small businesses where I'm either consulting, coaching them, or investing in some, because I just want to help people pursue their dreams. As I'm building, let's all build together, Production studio, it's been awesome developing a team around how to help more people tell their stories. And it just inspires me so much because there's people who are doing incredible things or have good ideas and maybe don't know how to launch it. Like having an idea for a podcast, how do you actually go about starting it? And so I have a central team and we're working with different people on my content and other people's externally. And then I'm like, what else? And then I'm still, working with business and tech leaders on what it means to think about diversity, think about culturally relevant strategies. And all of this is built off of my experience, both as a leader in a tech company, but also as an entrepreneur. I'm from a place that does not have big tech. I'm Mexican-American from Southern California. My family did not have these resources of all this technology and awareness of it. And that gave me a lot of perspective at Google of most small businesses are trying to they're hustling. They may not know about all these tools out there. So I promoted as much as I could resources at Google, but now I'm like, there's a lot I can do on the outside to keep advocating for communities like ours, others like it. And I think my word at Google was always about access. Like, how do people have access to technology? And now I'm like, there's people like, you've done amazing things leveraging social media tools. I've seen the growth of what you've done. I see so many amazing entrepreneurs that are building. And now to me, the word is elevate. How do I help people elevate their businesses, their voices? Just keep lifting as we all build together.
It's funny that a few of the other mentors that I spoke to the last week have also kind of made the decision to leave where they were to pursue of lifting others.
Yeah.
And I think especially like this year was like, it humbled all of us and everyone kind of like broke down. And I think that when you're there, you're really like, you're able to really think about like, okay, like what do I really stand for? What is my legacy? And it's not so much about accomplishment. Yes, the accomplishment is good, but am I really aligned with the purpose that like I'm saying I'm aligned with? It was such a great opportunity to audit yourself and to kind of align with what you want to be versus like what's actually happening. So a few of them were the same thing, would be like, okay, I see all these women now struggling because of COVID and there's so much, and I have all this information that I think I want to just dedicate myself to helping elevate other people.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that to me is like the most rewarding work we can do is the purposeful work. Because we can get paid, we can, there's all these other signals of success, but I'm like, if it doesn't align, like you said, with our values, our mission, what we stand for, and also if it doesn't make us happy, like I had a good career and I did things that made me happy, but what brings me joy, like I love nothing more than like sitting with entrepreneurs, helping them think about their business, how to grow it, and seeing the passion they have for it. And then in my mind, it's like, how can I add, like in Spanish, like mi granito de arena, like add my little part that like catalyzes, and it's like, that's all they needed. They just needed to either believe in themselves, know a connection or the tool or whatever. And to see that just amplify so much faster and better. It's so like, you can tell my energy.
Satisfied. And I'm sure like seeing them succeed and knowing that you had a part of that, it's like so satisfying.
Like, they deserve it.
So you guys, she's so cool. I think you're the coolest thing ever. Not only because you're like just you by yourself without anything in your resume. You're just this ball of energy, this ball of sunshine. You just make you leave a smile on everyone's face. But you not only went to Harvard, coming from where you come from. So did like your family understand what?
Oh my God, I didn't understand. Like I didn't
what that means.
No, like, oh my God. And still sometimes people are like, you did what? No, I'm from a place where people don't go to schools like Harvard. And in fact, my mom was the one who was like, Mija, you have to apply to Harvard. And I was like, why? Like, literally, why would I do that? And she's like, I was like, people from, and this is what I thought, right? This is the mentality I came from. I said, kids like me from Oxnard don't go to schools like Harvard. Like, that's it. It just doesn't happen. And she said, well, you never know unless you try. And then she kept saying it over and over. You never know unless you try. And I was like, Mom, like, why would I do this? So I didn't tell anyone I applied. I was like, it'd be so embarrassing if people thought like, oh, you thought you could get into Harvard. Like, who do you think you are? Which is so sad and unfortunate that often, especially in diverse communities, that's where we start, right? It's like, who are you to think you could do this? Anyway, I get in, I'm ready to say no, because I'm like, I'm not leaving California. No one in my family had left the state to go to school ever. And, my parents were first gen, but stayed in California. So for me, first in an Ivy League, first to leave California was huge. So yeah, so I mean, my abuelita still probably,
and even like being Latina, like from a Latin family, like you just do everything together.
Yes, yeah. I'm like, why would I leave California? And exactly, like, I'm super close to my family, and I went to public school. So I was like, I didn't know. I mean, I knew I got in. I was like, okay, whatever. And I almost said no. My parents were like, we're going to go visit. You need to at least see it before they're like, you're not going to let your daughter say no to this. So I went and I got to meet community there, and I got to see like, okay, I think I can handle this. Like, I just thought like, it's cold and boring here. I'm not going to come here. Anyway, so It was crazy though for me because I started in like, my intro economics class, whatever, sitting next to the world economics champion. And I'm like, is this even fair? Like, why?
Is that even a thing? Like they compete?
Yeah. Like mathletes, like things that I didn't know existed.
Yeah.
So, I'm coming from a place where I'm like, people go to college if they're lucky. Schools like this weren't even on my radar. So anyway, so I didn't get it. Once I got there, I was like, oh, it changed my life. It exposed me to a whole lot of different ways of living, ways of thinking. I'm grateful for that, but definitely stayed connected to family through it all. And so now when I come back, I mean, I'm home all the time. My friends from high school ask, sometimes they'll say that friends ask about me or whatever, how I'm doing. And I'm like, what, like, I hope that I never seem like the person I want to still be that person, like, I don't ever want to be like, oh, she went to Harvard, now she thinks she's better than us. Like, that's not me at all. But they're like, no, like, you're kind of just in another stratosphere and you go between both. And that's something that I really appreciated, is like learning how to be true to myself and be in these spaces and keep opening doors. Cause I'm like, I don't want to be the only one. Real quick side note, because of that, my parents visiting, coming to see me at school and realizing like, yes, it's a good school. It is what it is. But also my friends were like me, like we all thought we were the mistake. We all were like pretty down to earth people. And my mom was like, oh, there's other kids like this back home. So she started taking students. So she took a group of 5 kids, 4 of them applied, first gen Mexican-American boys, my sister's friends. 4 applied, 3 got in straight up. 1 got waitlisted, but he's fine. He went to Princeton.
What?
One of the 3 turned it down, went to MIT, and then the other 2 went. So like now she does all these college trips. So in many ways I see like I was almost like the experiment, like I was the first from my high school ever to go to that school. But now, and not just Harvard, other Ivy League schools, like it's almost like, even if I didn't put the effort in, because my mom is the one who made this happen.
Which is so cool.
Yeah, like props to my mom. She gets full credit for that. But like now it's changing what people know is possible. So I always tell people like we have to tell our stories because people don't know what's possible unless we know it's been done before.
That's so important. And yeah, and if it wasn't for you going, other people would never think that it was possible. And if you didn't have your mama because
opening the door
for so many of us do that, where we decide our narrative for ourselves and then we complain about like, oh my God, I'm never gonna, but we have to take responsibility for the narrative that we place on ourselves.
Yeah. And
so if it wasn't for your mom, if you would have had a mom who was like, yeah, you should stay home and help with the family, which is so normal in Latin families. But she was the one, oh, your mom's back. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mom's a pusher for sure. And it just really reminds me that like, we don't realize that everything we're doing can impact other people.
Yes.
And changing not only our own narrative, like girls from Oxnard don't go to schools like Harvard. I said that like that was fact forever. And it's like, no, now that's not the case. People from Oxnard can go to schools like that. And there's other people going to other amazing schools. And it's not that it's just about a big name school or anything like that as much in anything we're doing. Just remembering to your point, like this responsibility of like, there's people, you never know who's watching and who's inspired by, and I love the phrase, ordinary to you, extraordinary to others.
Yeah.
Now this is my norm, right? Yeah, I went to Harvard, it's whatever, like it happened, I did it, and I'm grateful, but I don't think about it every day like, oh my God, I went to Harvard. That's not how I feel day to day.
I would wear my Harvard sweatshirt like everywhere.
I know.
Like, you went to Harvard? Well, how can you tell?
How did you see it coming down the street? But there's other people around me that see that. And so I have to remember always that like our existence is that example somebody else needed to see, So thank you for giving me a platform to share that story, because often people then assume, oh, she went to Harvard, that was normal to her, or, this is crazy. Like never in my wildest dreams. In fact, I wanted to go to culinary school. I wanted to do food. Like that was my passion, my life. And when they made me go to regular college, I was crying, devastated. So just the backstory. I love hearing people.
I read that, that you actually sold chocolate covered strawberries in college.
Yep. I was so much fun because I'm from Oxnard, which I don't know if it still is, but it was known as the strawberry capital of the country. And I went to college, and before finals, the school would put out like strawberries and chocolate, and people would go nuts. And I was like, these people not have produce where they're from? Like, why are people getting so crazy over strawberries? Just, taking things for granted where they're from. So I was like, I could do this. So I looked up my competition. I looked up websites online, like what are they charging for online sales orders? And I was like, all right, I'm gonna charge less than them. I went to the dining hall in my dorm and was like, can I order wholesale, like in bulk through you? I borrowed their like their sheet trays, whatever. It's so cool. February, Valentine's Day, right? I sold them for Valentine's Day every year. Valentine's Day, February in Boston is so cold, freezing cold. So I had a tiny, tiny dorm room and then a living room. So I opened up the windows of my dorm and made it like a big freezer. So I'm there making strawberries, keeping them in this giant freezer, selling them online to people. It was my whole little hustle. So I'm like, I had the first pop-up business before pop-ups were a thing.
Yeah. You invented the pop-up.
I should put that in my house somewhere.
Yeah. Add that to your LinkedIn.
Right?
You should, totally. How did you have an internship at Google, or how did that happen? Because you go from like not only the first one in your family to go to Harvard, the first one in your town, in your city to go to Harvard. Yeah. And then you end up at Google.
Yes. So I'll try to keep, I always tell super long stories. So the short of it is that I went to school thinking, okay, if I can study food, which I wanted, I'm going to study business. Well, there's no business majors. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to join the Women in Business Club, and all these brands, these like big banks and stuff would try to like wine and dine us, recruiting. They want diverse talent. And I was like, I'm the only Latina here. It is diversity. Like, yeah, we're all women, but I'm like, you're trying to hire us. I have friends who want jobs. I can connect the dots. So I was like, I'm going to start my own club. So I started a group called the Latino Business Connection, all about making connections. Cause I was like, we don't have role models that look like us at these companies that were like supposedly on track to get jobs there. But like, I don't know what it's really like there. I don't have like, I can't call Papi's friends to get me a job. And after my freshman year, people got jobs. And I was like, they have internships? Like, how do you do that? What is an internship? I didn't know that you can go to school, but the way work works, I didn't have anyone telling me how to do that. So I came home without an internship. And sorry, long story long now. And I told my parents, like, well, who do we know? Like, my friends in school have people they can just hit up for jobs. Who do we know? My dad's like, well, I have a primo in Mexico who runs this cheese factory. I'm like, I'm down. So I hit up my friend, like, you want to come with me? So we went for the summer to Mexico. Schreiber Cheese has a factory in Mexico where they specialize in American sliced cheese. Random. I made up an internship program. Years later, 10 years later, they had me at their global HR conference, and I had me as their first international intern speaker. And I was like, I made that up. Okay, cool. Happy to be here. Anyway, so while I was there, I was like, if I didn't know someone on the inside, I wouldn't have been here. And this is by chance. And I have a lot of friends who don't have people on the inside. So I started a group. I just found emails online, and it's just like, I have a student group, and I made a list of like, I have like 60 friends that I think I could convince to join my club. And one of those people I emailed was a recruiter at Google. So I was like, all we want is to talk to people that work there. So we know like, what are these jobs we want to apply for? Went back to school and told my friends, like, I have all these brands that want to hire us. So I kind of made my own supply and demand, and I helped my friends get jobs at Google. Stop. And so they were like, when are you going to apply to Google? And I was like, I don't code. Why would I work there? Like, I want to do marketing. And they're like, they have marketing. There's marketing and legal and like everything else. I was just like, nope, Google's not for me. Again, almost like blocking myself. Like, I don't want to go to Harvard and I can't get a job at Google. So I was like, all right, I guess I'll just shoot my shot. So I applied and I got the internship in sales, and it was like my foot in the door. And I realized that no matter what my job was coming back full time, I was like, I think this is a place where we all have bad days at jobs. Like no matter what job it is, we're going to have one. And I was like, even on my worst day here, like I love that the food is free, that there's like massage chairs. Like,
we have a great cafeteria, so I'm in.
I was like the basics, right? I'm 20 years old. I'm like, I like this place. And that, people were they were finding solutions to problems that I found interesting, and I was like, I think there's opportunity for growth. And so I got the offer to come back full time, but it was through trying to find opportunities for all of us that I was like, they brought me along for the ride. So there's a couple of friends where we keep opening doors for each other. Like one helped me, I opened the door for him into Google, but then he pulled me through, convinced me to apply. And so that's my goal for all of us, is that we keep opening doors and then bringing people with us. And especially in spaces where we didn't think we could be,
What was it like to be not only a woman in Google, but a Latina in Google? And I know that you created your own department basically, which is hello, you're like another level cool.
Just so everyone's clear, I'm like,
so
I'm
cool.
like super fangirl. I'm your biggest fan, so we're here.
No, I'm your biggest fan.
Oh my God,
you're the coolest thing ever. So you not only went to Harvard, you not only then got a job at Google, but then you created your own department in Google. So talk to me about, first of all, what inspired that? Because obviously you were there and you saw the opportunity or something that was missing. So talk to me about that.
Yeah. So first of all, as soon as I got there, everyone knew I was Latina. I'm like, there's no denying it. Like they see my hair, that, my name is clearly Latina name. So I used to worry about like having imposter syndrome early on of like, oh my God, I'm the only one that looks like me here. Clearly it's like, it can feel like a lot of pressure to wonder, like, am I supposed to be at the table? Am I supposed to be here? And I was like, well, they clearly see me. I'm clearly the one that looks like an outlier, being super young, very much obviously like brown Latina girl, and thinking like, do I belong here? And early on, I realized actually my experience with the small business, our own family business, was really helpful. And people around me at the table had never started companies before. So I knew firsthand, like, no, I remember when I had to tell my dad, we need a website. Like as a business owner, and I know you can relate to this, there's so much on your plate that you're like, I'm trying to put out fires. Like, are we selling? Are we doing analytics? Sure, later, like things fall off. You can't do it all every single day. It's a lot to do. So that gave me the perspective of knowing when we're in a small business marketing meeting and they're saying we should do XYZ for small businesses. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure no business owner makes time for that. Like, that's crazy. Like no one has bandwidth to do that unless you're in a position where now you have interns and you're hiring people to help. So I started raising my hand, just being pretty candid about my experience. And like, as a small business owner, this is whatever. And I realized then that my own experience, like I'm the expert of my own experience. No one could take that from me. So that was really
I like that.
I'm the expert of my own experience. And for me, it was like, people can push back and question a lot of things, but no one can challenge my own experience. You can't say that's not true. You can't say, go find better data. It's like, this is a fact because I experienced it. So to the question of how I built the multicultural marketing team, even as an intern, I saw that my perspective, being of a diverse background, could add value. And so when I came back full time, I was in a role that was assigned to me. I was in HR technically. It's called people operations, but that was one role. I had 5 roles in total full time at Google, and I created 4 from scratch, completely from scratch. So I did the multicultural marketing team, but that was like the last role I created. Along the way, I created all of them. And this is not normal. This is just me being a traviata. Yeah. It's not normal. The way I did it was I saw problems that I thought could be solved. So I'm like, wait, anyone can advertise with Google? Well, who's telling the diverse business owners that they can't? Because no one told us. We didn't know this. And I realized like they're not intentionally excluding us. They just think, well, it's out there. Everyone can learn this. And it's like, no, but we need to be like made a connection with, right? Like I was like, no one's telling my dad and our business or his friends, his compadres that have businesses, like we don't hear about this. And the Latino community, the Black community, different groups, we're not that we're getting left behind, but we don't even know what's out there. So that was always kind of my mission of access. Like, how do I help our communities have access to the tools that are technically there, available for everyone? But do we know someone who's used them before that looks like us? Do we know someone we can trust with good examples of like,
and someone who could explain it in a way where they understand?
Yes. And like meet us where we are, right? Like language that we could, even in English, like break it down for us, make it seem not scary, not intimidating. So I started doing these projects. And all related to multicultural. So, doing business development on the diversity team, doing work with Latin America for one part, which was cool. And then ultimately creating the multicultural marketing team, working across different product areas and helping them understand how to do culturally relevant marketing, meaning even if it's in English, like some stuff had to, let's think about doing it in Spanish. Let's think about putting diverse people in it, but then also like, how do you authentically connect and bridge that gap, like the digital divide gap where people, our communities especially, we often are way more likely to buy a smartphone, but don't know how to use tools on our phone to build our business, so how do you connect those dots? So I love it. It's super inspiring to me because it feels like problem solving with tools that are already available. I get to be almost like the translator.
Yeah. So that's so cool. What did they understand what you were, as far as like you're Mexican American? And
Yeah.
we've had this conversation before where it's like, when you are Latin American and we grow up with the culture of our parents,
Right.
period, you know, even if we're born in America, but we're also American, but people who aren't from the same upbringing, it's like they don't understand what we are.
Yeah, no, I mean, we're unicorns. We're so special, you know? And it's interesting you bring that up because when I mentioned the Latin America work I did, I had explained to people like, I'm born and raised in America, but I care so much about my community here and those still in Latin America, but I'm not from Latin America. And there's a nuance there, you know, like
Yeah, but you grew up eating the food with the
totally,
language, with the music, like
totally. Yeah. So I I realized it was such a strategic advantage for me. Like, first of all, it makes me who I am, and I love our cultura, and I'm so proud to be Latina. But at work, usually people often think it's something that holds us back. That you can fall into, people around me don't understand me. It can be very hard to feel like, I remember when I couldn't talk to my bosses about what I did over the weekend because they're not going to get it. Like, they would just talk about things that didn't really interest me. I couldn't relate. Also, like, they're also like, why are there always so many family birthdays? And like, I'm like, my mom is one of 9 kids. We got birthday parties every weekend and
my
baptism.
mom is one of 12.
Oh my God, I love it.
Yeah. So they're like, oh, you must be like lying about how many cousins you have. I'm like, no. I'm like, my mom's one of 12. Each sibling, I mean, yeah, each sibling has 3 kids. So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
When you say that, my dad's Thea, who we're super close to, has 15 kids in Mexico. So I'm like, we could go 1 and 1, like 12 kids, 15 kids, like
Yeah.
hella family. And exactly, they're like another family birthday.
Yeah,
Yes.
like looking at you all sketchy, you'd be like, yeah.
Yeah.
My
Or
mom
like,
was one of 12. Yeah.
right? Or like, so why are you heading home since like December 18th? I'm like, well, it's because my dad's birthday. I should be home since the 16th because my family's all about the Virgen, and there's like 9 nights of holiday things before Christmas, and then there, my Christmas is the 24th, not the 25th. So all that, it's like, we talk about like the art of code switching. How much of yourself do you bring to the table, how much not? But I realized like it was so helpful in my career because I decided early on to make this my area of expertise, not just like, I know who I am, I know the culture I have. I also went to school on the East Coast. So I'm the most like, I'm a Mexican who loves all the other Latino cultures so much. I'm like, I love bachata, I love merengue, I love maduros, all the things that like I didn't grow up with, but I feel so blessed that like I feel like we're all cousins, right? So I'm like, I'm just learning about like my primo who's from Colombia or whatever, that culture. So having that exposure was really awesome. And at work, realizing that this is something they're never going to know. They can't experience this, or they're not even close enough. Like, I'm not Dominican, but I love connecting with my Dominican friends, and it's just like this proximity we have. It's beautiful. And so a mentor at one point told me, actually, technically a boss's boss, she said, don't be diversity girl. When budgets get cut, that's the first thing to go. I will never say her name because that does not sound good, but she was being a very rational.
Yeah.
This is not reflection of the company. It was just her one-off comment. I know the company doesn't believe or say things like that, but that was her. She was thinking, I'm looking out for you. Don't pigeonhole yourself and then risk.
Yeah, but then she's like she's putting her limiting vision on you and not seeing the possibilities. So it's like, don't put your limitations on me.
Yeah.
Girl who sees all these possibilities. Yeah.
And that to me is one of the biggest, like, super red flag. If someone's imposing their limiting beliefs, I'm like, I had to learn, like, it doesn't mean I have to receive it. I can hear it. I can process it, maybe consider the point, but I don't have to receive it. And so she walked out of the room. Like, I was like her mic drop little moment, but she walked out and I thought, I'm going to
pick up the mic from the floor.
Are we still here? Yeah. New message, actually, everybody. Pongan atención. I was like, no, I'm going to make this business critical. Like, I'm not going to have this be something that people overlook and think it's like charity work. It's do the right thing. It is doing the right thing. This is also doing the smart thing. This makes so much sense from a business standpoint. And like, I love when you're, let's say you're marketing a product that, like, when the customer uses it, if they win, you win, right? So I'm like, we all win if more Latinas are empowered to build businesses and grow them online. If Black women who are killing it with amazing YouTube content, if they're growing and the more we can collaborate and uplift with tools to help them grow, we've got the hustle. We know how to make our product, do our, whatever our thing is, but how can these tools help more? And so I committed, I was like, I'm going to make sure this is business critical. I know this makes sense but I had to be smart about it. I was like, oh, then I'm going to pull all the research. I'm going to dig up on the data. You can't just put someone who's Black, brown to do this work because it takes research. Like we have to really know what you're doing, especially when people don't get it. You have to have the resilience to be able to make the case for it, have the data points to prove it. Like I had to know like my pitch was bulletproof. And I had managers that made that tough for me sometimes. Like they'd push me and they'd push me. And I know it's because they wanted me to be really sharp with what my answers were, but I had to come correct every day, like constantly. And it's exhausting. I'll be honest. It's not easy to do that all the time, but when I'd make those wins, this progress of like, I got buy-in, I got budget, or this event I did, or this campaign I did, whatever worked, the outcome, the impact makes it worth it. And so, yeah, I mean, I had those moments where I was like, I don't look like anyone in the room. I sound way too passionate, way too, I've all this energy, and people were kind of like, oh my God. But I was like, bring it back to why I'm doing it. It's for my community and others like it. Bring it back to the fact that I know what I'm doing, because I know that we're not done here. There's more work to do until that's not over, until every one of our communities is at the playing field that everybody else is. To me, that like that equity, getting up to where everyone else is, that's going to take so much work. And I'm only one part of it, of that mission. And even outside of Google, that's obviously still what I care about. So yeah, I realized like this is my unique opportunity I almost used to say, I'm like Robin Hood with Wi-Fi. Like I got to be inside,
I love that.
on the outside,
Yeah. And I want to add to your point where you say that you had this idea and you saw this opportunity, but there's a difference between seeing something and seeing the opportunity, then going back and doing the research, educating yourself, and like being prepared. Because that's one thing. If you see something, it's like, I think that some people have the misconception of like, okay, if I could dream it, I could be it. That's what we're fed. I was like, yeah, you can, but you gotta go and like,
you gotta do the work.
Do the work.
Yeah.
And be prepared, because it's a hard road. The moment you decide, we were talking about this yesterday, with Holly Delgado, which is also marketing and tech. And I was like, it's hard. And sometimes you have to like, it's an uphill battle the entire time. And you have to do the work.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And I think it's interesting for me when people ask about my career, and the hot takes are real hot, right? Like, I could say all these awesome things, great. But often people are like, oh, she's lucky. Oh, things worked out for her or whatever. And I'm like, no, first of all, the definition of luck, in my opinion, is when preparation meets opportunity. So yeah, I've had opportunities. I had like, serendipitously, like I met the right person and all these things. But if I had just been there without having, like, I could talk data points in my sleep. Like I was doing the research all the time to be prepared, because, for example, I always tell people, like, you got to be ready for your dreams to come true, because they can happen. Doors can be open. And if you're not ready, you can you need to be able to shoot your shot when that window's open, So for example, I'd be in a meeting with an executive and thinking like, it'll be weeks before I finally make the pitch for what I need, the resourcing or whatever. And all of a sudden the first time it happened, she's like, so what do you need? Like point blank out of nowhere. And I dropped a number that like made the fastest calculations I've ever made in my life, thinking about like, what budget would it take? And I had been making my budget plans and stuff. And so I just said a number and she's like, all right, you got it. And I left the meeting and I was like, it was so hard. Like she grilled me on everything. And then in the end was like, I thought there's no way she's giving me what I need. And in the end, she said, yes, like just so fast. I was like, whoa, I was ready, but I didn't think I was ready. You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't like, oh, this is going to happen. It was just like, you got to stay ready, because you never know who's going to open that door for you. And that's like, I got lucky, but no, I was doing numbers at late night, early mornings, figuring out either.
Yeah. And if you wouldn't have done that, you wouldn't have had the opportunity. It wouldn't have happened for you.
If I had said like, let me get back to you, even within a few hours, what if she changed her mind? What if that moment got her and she's like, all right, fine. You just never know how those moments are going to impact. And like, I've had so many of those moments happen where it's like, I just had to be very clear on my vision, the mission, and what I need to do to get it done. Like you said, you can't just dream it and like, oh, now it's going to happen. Like, no, you have to know like, who is a stakeholder who can help you make it happen? What do you need to do it? And also to dream big enough to ask for sometimes even more than you really need, and not feeling bad about that. Like I added a little buffer. I was like, let's just pretend if I need $10, let me ask for 12. because it's always going to take more, and you never know, maybe let them bring it down. Like if they can only give 10, then cool. But I had to be comfortable coming prepared, being ready for like, or if I have 5 minutes with someone versus an hour. Early in my career, I was working directly for a vice president where it was like people reporting to her were like 8 levels above me. It was crazy. She picked me and I got to work directly with her. And we were supposed to have once a month calls for an hour, but she was always so busy that I'd end up with like 30 minutes, 5 minutes. Well, I had to prep in advance, like what's my 5-minute pitch, like update and pitch, what's my 30-minute topic, and then what's in an hour, because I never knew what I was going to get. So it's like, if I have to, it's like the craziest hot seat ever, because you just, if you don't know how big that window opening is, you got to shoot your shot. So I got good at like distilling it down as tiny as possible, more context, and then, all right, if we're gonna have a conversation, here's what it is. So
but imagine how all of your research, all of like basically your life experience, your education needs to be summed up in a perfect 5-minute pitch, or 30 or 15 or whatever you get at the moment. That's like a skill in and of itself.
It took
like
practice.
A hot seat pitch. Yeah. You should teach that. Yeah.
I know. I've been thinking
hot
about
seat pitches with Eliana.
Hot seat pitches. Exactly. Yeah. And then also like, and why are you the one that should do it? Why should they trust you? Why do you have the, not only, because a good idea is great. There's never going to be a shortage of ideas. It's always about that execution. So
yes.
Can you execute? Are you the right person to do it? And if things get hard, you know how to figure out how to way through it. So yeah, it was a lot to try to convey in a short amount of time, but that's what snowballed throughout my career, is finding people that could believe, and also showing them my progress along the way. So it wasn't like this is the first time they've heard it, you know? So by the time they're ready to say yes, I had to be ready for that yes.
You know what's crazy? That whenever I've been put in positions where I have to be like, well, why do you think that you're the one? I always find the struggle. And maybe, I don't know if you could relate, but I feel that in like Latin cultures, they have like the whole dream big, but they also have the mixed messaging of, as women, you're not really entitled. Like it's like the dream big, but you're not, you should be unentitled and humble and like.
It's like dream big, but be small.
Yes. Yes.
No, none of that. No, I totally understand what you're saying.
Yeah. Oh so God. Whenever I'll be like pitching my facts and all that stuff, and then they'll be like, but why you? And then I go back into like my, you know,
little girl inside of us.
Little girl inside will be like, well, you're right. Why me? Like I'm unentitled.
Totally.
Yeah.
I think, like I said, that phrase for me of like, we have to remember we're the experts of our own experience. So it's like, and also knowing, one of the things that I learned early on was like, we have to own our superpowers. It's just more efficient. Like let's say as a team, we need to own what we're good at. And if we're not good at something, someone else can be a part of that. But for me, that's what I had to realize, like being comfortable, and I had to prove it to myself. Like I have hard data now. Like I saw what they did. Let's say there's a project I did with the team, and I had the metrics of their output. Like they had, I'll never forget it. In the same week, like all the variables were the same. Another team got 12,000 impressions. In that same amount of time, I got 12 million. So I was like, objectively, no one can take these. Like, you can't step to me if I got 12 million.
No one can make you like putting Google. I can just imagine you upside.
I'm like, I got little hoops on, but not that big.
Yeah.
And for me, that's what it comes back to, is like, I have to almost be able to pitch myself.
Yeah.
Like I have indisputable facts. And that's one of my phrases I love. It's not a flex, it's a fact. Like,
boom. I like that. I'm gonna make that into a t-shirt.
Girl, tell me, because I just told somebody, I'm like, we need to put this on a shirt already. That might be our first collab. I feel like we've been destined for collabing at some point on something. So yes,
I love that.
Right? Because I think that our culture, it's like the beauty of how humble we are as a community. Our humility is valued as a value, as a virtue. It's so beautiful. Like, oh my God, like people who work hard and don't show off about it, like don't be arrogant. It's like, there's an extreme though, where it's like, we're not going to the extreme of becoming arrogant, bad people, just because we can own what we're good at, own what we're prepared for. And also the belief that like, we're the right person for the job. Otherwise we wouldn't want it. So I think that we have to start to unlearn some of the things. Like there's a lot of our culture we can keep and retain forever. It's beautiful, but it's okay to unlearn some things. It's okay to unlearn that humility is going to make us successful, because it's not.
It's not.
So I think that for us, it's like, how do we instead position ourselves to, and remembering like why we're doing it. It's not because we're just trying to be the baddest person and make it only for ourselves. Like remembering like, no, the why matters. Like we're doing it for our families, for the people coming up after us. It's not just the Janet show. It's not the Eliana show. This is like, we're bringing people with us. And then knowing, again, we may not say this to them, but for us to feel grounded in our why. And like, yes, I am the person for it because I have this experience, because I have a plan, and because we deserve it. We work hard for it. And then we know like, it's not
Yes. But it's
about
the understanding of like I will never say something without having, like you said, all the facts behind it. Like I am a master in my field because it's what I've done since I was 3 years old. It's the only thing I've done. I've studied every aspect of it. And I, every single day, and I read and read and read. I'm obsessed with learning. And I think that saying it without having the backup is different than like saying it and having the backup.
Yeah. I think it's about that exactly. Like when we know, like no one will outwork us, no one will have more focus. If we know this is like, and I think it's on us to know, do you know why you want it? Like, is this something, like you said, like if you know you're researching, you're grinding on this, like almost like a loca, like we are so about it.
We're
How
such
do you
locas.
you know, we're total locas. We go crazy. We're like
We're such locas.
expert in this thing.
Yeah.
And it's like, we know that's unparalleled. Like, it's almost like, show me someone else who will do this, because I'm taking it to a level, and we have to know that that commitment is real. But if we're doing it, we deserve to see that in ourselves. And also something else I think is like, we are often kinder to our friends than we are to ourselves. We hype up our girls like, oh my God, Janet, you are perfect for this. You would do it. Like we're here to hype, but we don't do that for ourselves. And if our friends saw us, they would be hyping us up too. So I think we have to learn how to hype ourselves and know it's not like we're not gassing people up. This is real because we're doing the work. We're putting in the effort.
Absolutely. Well, while putting in the work and being locals with work, that could sometimes get us in trouble with our health. The first time that I've heard about burnout in the casual sense, where you're like, oh my God, I'm so burnt out. But the first time that I actually heard about burnout for real was in your speech at the Orgullosa event, and where you shared your experience with burnout. So can you talk to us about that?
Yeah. So burnout is real, and burnout usually is seen as this horrible thing. It sucks when you're in it, but usually people assume it's coming from like being, pushed to a point of like no return, of like, as if it's always a bad thing. In my case, it came out of being practically addicted to my work. And because I loved what I was doing. But I mean, part of it too was, I didn't have as much support as I needed. So that was hard. I didn't have people around me cheer me on enough, but I was so committed to what I was doing. And I felt this pressure I felt like the weight of my community and other diverse communities, not just mine, like multicultural, not just mine, but all of these people, I felt this weight on my shoulders. And I was not putting myself first. I was putting the work first and my mission first, but it didn't feel bad because it was like, no, but this is what I like.
Purpose driven. Yeah.
Purpose driven burnout is real. Because I think that, some people think
that's so true, because you feel like you feel almost guilty for stopping to take time, because it would be more acceptable if you were doing it for you, but the fact that it's so purposeful and it helps so many people that you feel like guilt.
Yes. Yeah. It feels selfish. It almost feels like this train is moving. How am I going to stop it? How am I going to get off the track to take care of myself? Like this thing has to keep moving.
Yeah.
So the first time I dealt with it in a major way was when it's weird. I think there was like a metaphorical significance to it. I was super burnt out, but I didn't address it. I was just like, keep pushing. I lost my voice for 3 months. I was like down to a whisper. I could barely speak. At one point, I just couldn't really speak at all. And I was getting precarpal tunnel. So there was a moment when I wanted to tell my boss, hey, I can't work today. And I couldn't call her, and we couldn't video chat because I couldn't speak in any case. And I couldn't email her because my hands hurt from just working too much all the time. And I was like, my body's shutting down. My body's telling me I need to take a break. And that to me is like, our bodies know, we ignore it a lot. I've had all types of like signs of stress building up in my body. I've had the dermatologist tell me to chill. I've had the dentist tell me, and I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. Kept pushing. Again, purpose driven, like other people depend on this matters, whatever. And I had to finally stop and pause. And now as I'm building my own thing, it's helped me realize like the most important way we can ensure the success of what we're doing is ensuring that we are taken care of first. Because a friend of mine had to teach me when I was like at my lowest, he's like, you can't pour from an empty cup.
Mm.
And people say that all the time, but I was like, what does that mean I do then? Like, and then I was like, okay, I have to take off work because I couldn't speak and like physically was like past, you know, I had expired my lifespan at that point of what I could do. And then I was like, do I do hobbies? What are hobbies? Like my work and my passion. And it's beautiful to be able to do work that we're passionate about and that aligns with our purpose. But when that's all you do, then it's like, I was like, well, who am I outside of a Latina in tech advocating, da, 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 da. And then, so I read this book called The Last Lecture by Randy Pausch, and it's all about how his thesis is life should be measured by the number of childhood dreams you accomplish. So I was like,
I love that.
right? And I think you've
I'm like,
accomplished
I'm writing that down.
Yeah.
Say that again.
Life should be measured by the number of childhood dreams you accomplish.
Oh, I love that.
So I had to do a lot of introspection and think about, well, what were my, because I was like, what are my hobbies now? Okay. I was like, I don't have any, I haven't done hobbies in years. What did I do before I got all caught up in what I'm doing? And I started saying, Ellie the kid, what was Ellie the kid about? What'd she do? And I was like, I used to bake, I used to paint, and I don't do that ever. It was like, either because I don't have time or because Google feeds me, so I don't buy groceries, which is not a problem, but like, I didn't buy food.
Google has that good cafeteria.
That good food. or all my friends are, no gluten, whatever. So I used to be a cake decorator in bakery. So I'm like, I got no one to make cakes for. So it also got to the point where I was like, if I make a cake, who is that helping? Who is that? That doesn't do anything for anybody. But if I'm working, it helps more people. So I had this guilt of like, this is just for me. No one benefits. But if I work more, it benefits all these people. Like I'm some Santa here, but like, that pressure of like, it does more for others. So I didn't have a choice at that point. So that's when I finally, one of my childhood dreams that I finally got to do was I dreamed of going to the Cordon Bleu in Paris.
And you did.
And if it wasn't for burnout, I wouldn't have done it. So
how long were you there?
It was basically a summer program. I got to do like an accelerated course. So I wouldn't say I'm a chef, but I've definitely taken classes that now actually it became my thing. I've traveled the world to different places and I take cooking classes wherever I can. I've done it in France and Italy and South Korea. It's like, I also dreamed of being like an Anthony Bourdain. And so I was doing that without realizing it. And it was just only because I think sometimes the darkness we go through helps us remember our own light. And like, this brings me light. And even if it helps no one else, this was
it nourishes your soul.
Yeah. And also I didn't realize that I fell out of love with myself. And so I went on this trip. It was like my own eat, play, love is what I call it. And I was like, my goal is to fall in love with myself again and to be my own best friend.
Ooh, I love that about falling out of love with yourself.
Yeah.
I reached out to you when I was feeling weird because I had experienced burnout before I collapsed. I had reached out to you because you're the only person that I knew that had gone through it. And I was like, I think that I'm experiencing burnout. I think that that's what I'm feeling right now. I don't understand it. And then you recommended a book called Your Second Life Begins When You Realize You Only Have One.
Yes. Did you read it?
Yes. And it was like,
oh my God, I'm like,
no, it was like, and for me, it was like really emotional because it was exactly what I needed to hear in that moment. And it was just so cool how like to have people in your life that in your darkest moment where you feel like you're so alone and not understanding what the hell's happening to you, to be able to reach out to someone and will just be like, yes, I could help you along the way. Let me know if you want to get on a call, whatever you need, I'm here. Here's a book that helped me. And I'm like, oh my, it was like exactly what I needed at that moment. So thank you so much.
When I said I'm going to cry, it's because my spiritual healer told me through your healing, you will help others heal. Through your healing, you will heal others. And so my burnout experience and all the times I've had it have been very hard, very real. In fact, I have another book for you right next to me, but another burnout experience I had led me to a return.
I have that one too.
Okay, you're good. So that book that I recommended, I remember thinking, our schedules were tough. It's interesting how like, you never know how, if it's a phone call, if it's a text, if it's a book recommendation, you never know, right? If it makes an impact. But that book really moved me, the one you read. And I bought it, and my mom ended up reading it first. And I was like, and it's what she needed in that moment. And the message, I mean, the title, I think is kind of obvious. Like, your second life begins when you realize you only have one, right? Like, just bringing us back to like, this is our one life to live. We need to make it worthwhile. So when I recommended it, I was like, I don't know if she'll read it. I hope it helps. So to hear this now, like, also anyone watching, like, this is crazy that I get to hear this live in this conversation now. What a beautiful, like, full circle moment. Thank you for sharing that. And I'm so happy to hear that it was what you needed. That's like, I call it like by divine design that our paths crossed and that I could share that book.
Absolutely.
Oh,
Now, with what you're doing with your business,
yeah.
You also started your tequila company?
Yeah. So family business, organic tequila alquimia, which we started years ago. And
Alquimia is alchemy.
yes, exactly. So alchemy in Spanish is alquimia. And, you know, I think of it as, I even think of my dad and how I think when he was in a moment of burnout of like, he's an optometrist, so he was working all the time. And this became, he says optometry is his love, but tequila is his passion. And so I think that for all of us, even if we're on a path, on a career track, it's never too late to pursue a passion project. Ours was a family project that turned into a business, turned into a brand. So connecting the dots between what we were just talking about, I think that, you know, in moments of burnout, when we're trying to figure out like what really matters to us, what inspires us, what makes us come alive, we had this project that we turned into a business. And it's been a really cool way to connect with our culture in a meaningful way, our community. So my dad was born in Mexico, moved here when he was 4 years old, but went back and found a way to grow agave on our family ranch. It was my great grandparents' ranch that no one was really doing anything anymore. And we found a way, he did specifically, he figured out how to make the organic tequila, meaning growing agave organically, completely no pesticides and herbicides, nothing, which is really rare. And then it was funny too, as a family business, like I had to convince my dad, like, I know how to do design, like I can design bottles and labels and things. And so we've been kind of growing together, making it happen. And so we think of it as like alchemy is making gold out of natural elements. So we say we made liquid gold out of all natural elements. And
Because
so,
I read in one of your interviews that you said that other like tequila has a lot of chemicals in it, which I didn't know.
yeah. So if anyone is interested in buying tequila in the future, what I would look out for is making sure
All
you're
of
buying.
us, yeah.
If anyone needs more in this time, especially
The entire Vixen army, yeah.
I know, right? Looking for tequila that's made of 100% agave is the most important thing, first and foremost. But if you can, finding some that's organic, it's important because the way I think of it is, it matters a lot with tequila to be organic, because if you think of wine, the grapes that make wine only grow on the vines for a couple months. So if they spray with pesticides, it's not good for you, but it's not the worst. But with tequila, the agave takes 6 to 8 years to mature in the soil, growing before you harvest it. So they are spraying, most companies spraying it down with pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, all these crazy chemicals.
That long.
For that long, every season, adding more and more. Then you harvest it, you distill it. First you bake it, ferment it, distill it. The process of making tequila. Then often they add more chemicals to accelerate the process, or just once it's distilled, it almost heightens it even more. The chemical composition of, I get all nerdy about it, the chemical composition of the tequila.
I love it.
So by the time you drink it, it's literally like, it's like weed killer in the form of, so when people say like, oh, I don't do tequila, it burns or it makes me feel hungover, it's like, well, by the time you drink it with all these chemicals, all these artificial colors, sugars, it's awful. So for sure, make sure it's 100% agave. But if you can, when you drink it organically, like, in fact, I have a bottle. Of course, I have a bottle right next to me.
Bring
it. You can probably see my pajamas. So when you finally have our tequila, this is the purest form of tequila, because there's nothing added to it. And not only that, I mean, we don't add any chemicals, sugars, additives at all. So people who drink it, most people have told us that when they drink only this, without mixers, without any other drinks, they don't feel a hangover, because depending on how much people can consume, of course. So everyone know your own tolerance, but it's because it's not full of all the artificial, like this is what it was meant to be. Like this is also, you can only make tequila in 3 areas of Mexico. You can't make it anywhere else. So this is like our champagne, you can only make champagne in France. So this was a very traditional spirit of Mexico. You can only make it in Mexico, and very few companies are still Mexican owned and operated. So we're proud to be one of them.
And that is made from your great granddad's. That's amazing.
Rancho, yeah. And it happened because my abuelito was on his way out, passing, near the end of his life. And he was like, just sell the ranch, just, do something. Well, we don't live there anymore. And my mom convinced my dad, like, tell your dad we have to keep it. Like, your great grandmother worked too hard to keep it, even after your great grandfather passed away. So my abuelito said, all right, find a way to make the land productive, do something with it. So my dad looked up everything from shrimp to alpacas, tomatoes, landed on agave, learned how to do this.
Way cooler than alpacas.
Right. I know. I would have cute sweaters, but this keeps me a little warm.
Yeah.
Anyway, so long story long is that he had studied bio in undergrad. My parents are first gen, so my dad had gone to college, UC Santa Barbara, knew how to use a bio kit, tested the soil, and was like, we can do this. And people told him he was crazy. They said, and we look like the Americans coming back, right? Like, because we're from here now. We're both, but they're like, you guys have been over there for so long. So it's been beautiful to see them now see this as like, we came back and helped the community and made the soil quality better. We've impacted the environment, created jobs locally where everyone would just come to the US, sometimes not in safe ways to pursue work. So to be able to create a product that is eco-friendly, it's impactful, making jobs, and we contribute to social causes that matter to us. So we support, supporting farm workers, education for girls, Black Lives Matter. We think of it as it's our vehicle for making an impact. So it's been cool.
It's like the legacy of your family. How cool.
Yeah. So it's been special to think about how we can take what we, our culture, our heritage, and then adding in the new, like the science and the marketing and design and stuff like that. So,
and the importance of having someone in your inner circle to push you towards the possibilities, and that being your mom, for you, for the community, for your dad.
I know.
Mom's the MVP.
Mama comes through. Yeah. She's the one who just says, you never know unless you try. And the other thing she always told me is, in everything you do, who are you helping? And so when I think about my work, that's one of the biggest things that drives me. It's like, there's moments when I was like, there was a pinnacle in my career when I said, I used to say I'm a marketer masquerading as an activist. But now, given I had to prioritize all these internal, goals and all this corporate stuff, I was like, now I'm an activist masquerading as a marketer. I was really hard on myself. That wasn't entirely fair, but I was like, I'm not making the impact that I wanted to make. I'm here doing what I need to do, corporate objectives, sure. The stakes were higher. I got more budgets to do what I wanted, but I had to do that at the cost of doing all these events for brands and all this other stuff that was work that the company cared about. But I'm like, that's not my mission though. That's not helping small businesses. That's not helping students. So having those checkpoints with myself, my mom's voice always comes back to me. Who am I really helping?
I want to meet her.
You are more invited. You can come hang in Miami sometime.
If you could create a curriculum for entrepreneurs, what would be in that curriculum?
Okay. I usually say there's the way I think of it is there's 6 steps to launch. Let me see if I can remember them all. So first, I think it's know the people you aim to serve. If it's a product, a service, if it's a problem you're solving for, or an opportunity, whatever that is, know who you're serving. The customer has to come first, always, customer, consumer. Then you need a prototype, whatever that idea is. Figure out, well, first, the people, the problem, but that kind of goes in one. The prototype is you have to start somewhere, because people often go into analysis paralysis and they're like, it has to be perfect. And it's like, no, start with an MVP, minimum viable product, as we say in tech, or just something, an example. If you're going to start a dance studio, have one in your yard, do a dance class, do something to know if it's going to work, if people want this or not. Then I think that's, understanding what does your own prototype look like. Then you fix it, you make improvements. So you have to continue to iterate on that first one so that you get it to a good place where you have a proof of concept. Now, this is real. I've proven that this concept makes sense. All right, that's kind of step 3. I don't really have the numbers in my mind, right? But let's say step 3. Then once you have that proof of concept down, now you can potentially pitch it either to your customers, investors, whoever it is, because you've done it, you have that example, you're the one to deliver this, and you feel good about what that is, the product, the service, the experience. And then after that, it's like, all right, now we got to pilot it. So do a whole lot more, get the pilot running. And once it's going well, now it's like, all right, now you're ready to scale and make this bigger. How do you package up what this experience is? What's the value proposition? How is this impacting people? What are the success stories like? Is there a website at this point? Take it from you can do things in a very scrappy way early on. I think people who get obsessed with the website and the fonts, or Latinas Who Brunch, tomorrow's our 3rd birthday. We don't have a website yet. We have almost 17,000 people in our community. We don't have a website.
Wow.
And I had a concussion, so it kept me offline for a long time. And it was giving me anxiety. Like, I don't have a website. I'm not legit. And I was like, no, the prototype is the community. The pilot, it all exists. We know this is real. We know people want it. The website will come. So I think people often get obsessed with like the optics of it all. How does this look? What do people think of it? It's like, that doesn't matter. If your core customer or consumer knows what you're doing and values it, they'll keep showing up, even as you improve your branding, improve your presence, all that. And then ultimately now it's like, how do you make it programmatic where it doesn't depend on me or you, the founder, having to run it every single day? Like, how do you make it something that's more sustainable? Because we will put blood, sweat, and tears into this. We need to make
automate.
automate, outsource, figure out ways to make it sustainable. So then you can think about the bigger picture plans of, are there partnerships involved? What's the next stage? And so that to me is like, you can't fail if you've tested it, if you gave it a shot, improved on it, and then learn how do you do more of it. And so that whatever you're building can handle growth. Because what if it goes great? Are you ready for that success? Are you ready to scale and ready to make it big? And then, along the way, if it's something where you need to get funding from a source or figure out a way to monetize, like, I always think if you're doing something that works, that people want, you can find ways to monetize. That's not the problem, but you have to prove that there's value to people.
Thank you for those amazing tips. I know that, I mean, I know that for me, without knowing, I was kind of following the same method, as in like, whenever we do anything, you go for, like, for us, before we opened the market, I opened as a pop-up first to test if even the demographic in that area would even work before I committed to a lease or anything like that. And then anytime that we launch anything, we kind of go through the same steps without realizing that we're doing this, and everything is tested. So the moment it launches, there's no more putting out fires, because you have to spend more time in the development of the product, testing it. So once you launch, you can move on to the next thing, and that's just automated and it lives on its own.
Yes. It's almost like your baby can fly. It doesn't need training wheels, whatever the metaphor is. Like, it doesn't need so much hand holding, because you're like, I already tested everything. And I've been a part of that. Like, I've been to, I think your studio before was a real studio, like the one I went to, whatever space it was with Vixen in Vixen in New York.
Body and Soul, and
Body and Soul in Miami,
yeah.
both, right. And I love, and I also, the other thing is, people often think, no, people want to see the final. People want to see your growth. They want to be part of the journey. Yeah. So for me to be able to say, I tell people all the time, like, I used to go when it was a Body and Soul, and then I got to go to her at the studio in Wynwood, and like, we're a part of that journey now, and that's something that, like, that builds loyalty, and that's something you can't buy that. Like, to have, and building community too, right? Where people are like, I went to her earliest event and I saw her growth and I was there. That's something too, you can't buy that. And I think it's beautiful to build community around whatever it is that you're creating, because that loyalty is priceless.
No, and honestly, if someone were to ask me what got me through this pandemic, as far as the business, like, yes, it was like, yes, you have the personality traits of the grit and kind of resilience and seeing things through, but it's my amazing community that they were like, no, I don't care if I can't take your class. I want to support you and I want to see you through this, because you've added value to my life in some way. And now it's an opportunity where I could pay it forward. And a lot of our clients did that. So that community is almost like the most important, like, strategy you could do for your business, is build that community by providing so much value for them, and they'll have your back.
They have your back. Yeah. And I think people often want to look like it's like this brand, it's something else. It's like, no, they're investing in you. They're buying your product. They want to be associated with you. Like, I'm a part of the Janet Jones fan club. I have shirts that have your signature on it. Like, I've bought the merch, and I think that's something that, like, when people are bought in like that, if you need to pivot your business, if you're like, you know what, let's just pretend this is not the case, but like, we're not into dancing anymore. Now we're going to teach people how to build their own businesses. All of those people that have been in those classes are going to tell their friends, like, oh my God, let's support this other thing she's doing, or like, I've seen so many women that started with one thing and pivoted to another. And it's like, we're often afraid to pivot, but I think having community and knowing that they're going to have our backs, that's what makes it feel safer. Almost in business terms, we say we de-risk our business, right? Like, it's risky to make changes. Of course, it's risky to take a risk, obviously. But when you know you have a base and that they aren't going to be like, well, I don't even know what she's up to anymore, I'm not about it. Like, no, instead that they want to show up and support, that makes it so much easier, not easier, but like comforting as an entrepreneur to
But you've
know.
also had, I'm sure you've also proven that they could trust you. And if you all of a sudden are like, listen, I don't want to dance anymore, this is what I want to do because I've learned this along the way. And I know that this is something that you need, because being consumer centric is more on like putting yourself in the shoes of the consumer and what are like the pain points, what is it that they need, and providing them with that service instead of seeing it like, okay, we have a consumer in a door, they're just a number, it's just data, and how can I get dollars from them? Especially in the climate that we're in today, people see right through that.
Oh my God, completely.
Yeah.
This is an example, right? Like I never would have thought, because also we met, so that's cool. But like before meeting you, I was one of your customers, right? That went through the classes, loved it. I love it with you and all the instructors too. Everyone has always been awesome. Truly, genuinely mean that. But in my mind, it's like, okay, if I were to describe what this is, it's these classes that are amazing and like empowering, and all the dance moves are fun, and the playlists are great. You know, did you see it ever happening? Maybe you envisioned it, but pandemic life has made us have to pivot, where now you're doing Herstory content. And it's like, you know, that the women, you've gotten to know your customers, you know, your community, and they love to dance, but they also are looking for that empowerment. Well, empowerment can come in different ways. We did that with Latinas Who Brunch too. We did all our brunches in person, always in person, and pandemic hit. We're like, all right, well, let's do virtual brunching, and now we do vision boarding workshops and financial literacy, because it's like, we know what people, we're having conversations with people.
Yeah. And also like the journey has been really effing tough.
Yeah.
Like a lot of bumps and falls and yeah, we've been able to get up each and every time. But I feel like if we have information that can help others avoid those bumps and falls, like it has to be given out, especially after what we went through as a world. Like I'm in a position where I have awesome friends in my circle. Who have so much knowledge. Let's just talk and share it and provide people with information that isn't available, you know?
Yeah. And I think one of the things I love, I think it's important to like unbox the black box, you know, like often people make things seem so scary and hard, and things often are hard, but it's not impossible.
Yeah.
But people make it, if we don't know the answer, then we think it must be impossible. And it's like, no, if I figured something out, I want to help someone else. And if the blueprint wasn't written before I did it, then I'm going to make the blueprint. So I'm working on my online courses and things too, because I'm like, I can't have this information just stay here and then that's it. Like that, it's like, it's stuck, like it needs to continue. And I want to be able to help other people do it, because I just feel like I didn't work this hard to only use that for myself. Like if someone thinks that I'm doing it just for me, I'm like, that means the bar, your perception of the ambition for myself, that bar is way too low. Like I know that I want to do this for other people too, so that everyone does more. We all do more together.
And I feel like the universe, God, will give you hardships and will give you all of those lessons, so that you could help other people through those things.
Yes. If I hadn't gone through burnout and read that book, you wouldn't have read that. You know what I mean? Like that, that connecting the dots already. I'm like, I'm so mind blown by that like,
and not only that, just knowing someone who had it.
Yeah.
I didn't know anyone who had it. So there's nothing, and especially like being a woman in like leadership, unless you know other women in leadership, like your day-to-day experiences are very hard to relate to. Like it's very lonely.
Yes.
Because no one really understands. And then the people, unless you're there, it's like they feel like, well, what do you have to complain about? No, it's hard.
Yeah.
You know,
and
so like
they see you shining and they think, oh my God, her life must be so amazing. And in many ways it is, but they don't see that behind the scenes, it's hard. There's a lot of hard things going on, and leadership is lonely.
It is lonely. So I'm so forever grateful for you. And it just comes to show like how important it is to talk about experiences. Because if it's one person, because what you did by talking about it, you helped me. And then I've been just talking about it to everyone. So hopefully I'm able to help one person. And I feel like that's how we could change the world together, honestly.
Really. I think it really is. Even if it feels like it's just one person, we are all like, we're our own influencers, we're our own ambassadors, you know? And I think that it's so beautiful that this is happening and we can talk about it, because I remember when I shared that, it was it was early on enough. It was a few years now, at least 4 years ago. I remember thinking, I don't want to be the downer. Like, I don't want to go on stage and talk about burnout and freak people out, but whatever, let me just be honest about it. And I was ready to start speaking about it after having gone through all this. And it does take courage to be vulnerable. So I commend you for talking about it. I commend myself for talking about it. And I think that when we're our most vulnerable, we're our most powerful. And power doesn't have to mean like I'm at the top of the mountain. It means like our power to influence, our power to help. And so that also makes us more human. And then people can relate, because if people think, oh, her life is perfect, she's this phenomenal entrepreneur and has dance studios, or like she's doing all these things, people feel disconnected. And then they think, oh, we can't relate. And it's like, no, I think the hard stuff is what helps us bond even more. Like at Latinas Who Brunch events, we always have encourage people to share, like you can share the lows and the highs. Like we need to be in a place where we can celebrate the wins and not think it's competitive and like hype each other up, but also share the lows because they're real, they're human. And often that's what bonds us, because it's like, we're all going through something. It's literally foolish to think that we're not all going through something. And if we share more, we can help each other get through it that much better, faster. Because you're right, hard stuff is always going to happen. I think life is about building up our toolkit so that when it happens, it takes us less time to come back to ourselves, the center, because it's going to keep happening. But now it's like, what do we come back to? I was rereading the book again recently because there were some of the things, techniques in that book that I was like, I need to do this again. I need to write down my goals. I need to do all these things. And it's just helpful to know, one, we're not alone going through it. And two, we've got through it once, we can do it again and learn new skills, new, I think of it as that toolkit, so that when it comes, we're not shocked like the first time, because it's hard.
My friend, thank you so much for giving me this time. You shared so much valuable lessons and insights. You guys, I have an amazing Q&A from Eliana that we're going to share as a PDF. So you're going to get to know even more of her. And let's do this again. Let's do a collab, please.
Yeah. Yes. Well, you're cordially invited. We should do one with Latinas Who Brunch, and then back and forth on whatever, all our platforms. I would love it. I feel like we're long overdue.
For sure.
I would love
it. You're my favorite chingona.
Oh my God. You're my favorite fiercest dancer I've ever met. Also, like I told you once, I was like, I have this like closeted, like, you know, J-Lo wannabe inside of me, and you'd be like, let it out. And
everyone does.
Right? Yeah, I know. Like, apparently I'm not the only one. And I go to classes and I would do it more. And in fact, that inspired me. I do yogaton now. So I do yoga to reggaeton and I love it. And it's super fun.
Yogaton, that's amazing.
Yeah. So anyway, we'll have to, that is something that I've been meaning to put more love and time into. I'm like, I have the URL. It's almost a thing.
Yogaton. So like the downward dog has a whole new meaning in that then.
Oh yeah. In these poses. Exactly.
Yeah. Love it.
Like a totally different beat, but anyway, thank you for having me. This was amazing. And to everyone watching, you are just blessed to have a leader like Janet. I'm so proud of you and inspired by you.
Love you.
I love you too.
Boop, boop. We'll talk soon. Bye.
Bye.